we good? Okay, thank you for your patience as we work out the technical difficulties, which we are still working on, but that's okay because Emma's just going to start talking to you without the flashy video, but hopefully that'll come up soon. So we have Emma Carlson. She's a student here at UW, and she did a study abroad last year. And it was so profound that she actually decided to change her major because of it. So she's going to tell you all about it. So go for it.
Yep. Hi, my name is Emma Carlson, like she said. And I was sort of in the process of changing my major anyway, kind of still working on what I'm working on, but a lot of stuff to do with education, because when I studied abroad, I was able to work with students for the whole year and work in classes with 4th graders through 9th graders in the Swedish school system, learn about how they worked and talk with their teachers. So it got me a lot more interested in education, especially pedagogy and so higher education. But if the video works, I tried to do something a little more engaging and exciting, which is a little more complicated, like normal, problems with technology and education. But if the video works, it's going to talk about kind of the story and the ideas behind what we did in the classroom. I stayed in a classroom with a teacher who was an English teacher / technology teacher, and we had a couple different projects that we did throughout the year, but one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was that we connected our classroom of 8th graders learning English with a classroom in Kansas that was a college class, and they were a student teaching class, and so they took their students and our students and we connected them sort of one by one and had them create lesson plans for our students. They got to know each other through the different forms of social media, different technology, emailed back and forth and talked in Google Docs, and so then they got to create different lesson plans for the students that were more individualized, and it gave us as teachers a lot more time in class to talk about what they were learning, and they could do their own little projects. And then the students that we had, the 8th graders, got to tell the college students whether or not their lesson plans were way too easy or they were too difficult, or whether or not they didn't like it, it wasn't interesting. And so it helped both students be better students and helped both students be better teachers. And so that sort of was the premise of what I wanted to talk about. And is it working?
You have to log in.
And so I'm going to log in really quick. The video as well, it didn't register the voiceover, which is part of the problem. So while the video is going through, it'll have sound, and then I'll kind of talk through it so it makes sense, because it doesn't make as much sense if I don't talk. see if it works. And I'm going to try and talk through it. We'll see how the timing works because it didn't accept my voiceover. But it's sort of an experiment as well. I figured we could play with education and play with technology. So we'll see how it works. Talking about all the technology that we have. We all have computers and tablets. And there seems to be a lot of technology taking over the education, taking over classrooms with all their noise. Which can be pretty overwhelming for a teacher. And it raises a lot of questions. How do we use technology in our classrooms? What should we do with it? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's important to look at how we look at education. And as teachers, we have a lot of responsibility to be the bosses and be in front of our classes all the time. But we're held to a lot of standards as well. Especially in education right now. With students, there's a lot of overlooked potential with what they can do in the classroom and how they can teach themselves and teach others. And somehow with all these good intentions, we still get mixed up and end up with a lot less experience for new teachers. And at the same time, more chaos in the classrooms. But remember all that technology we were talking about in the beginning? Let's find a way to use it. So let me tell you a story about this past year that I was able to spend abroad, studying education in Sweden. And amongst all the coffee that I got to drink and all the strawberries that I ate, I was able to spend time in classrooms, specifically with one teacher, Ola Brorson, and his class of 8th graders. We were able to connect with another teacher in Kansas State and her class of college students. Through this connection, we got to focus on what we call global learning and connect around the globe with different students and different educators. Create a global classroom. So let's look at how we can facilitate connections in this digital age. By connecting a teacher or student teacher individually with a student, we can help that student teacher gain more experience and that student have a one-on-one interaction with their teacher, which helps personalize their learning, as well as give them a real-world application for what they're learning. The way this works is that the students and teachers get to know each other. Sometimes technology is complicated. And they get to talk about what they're interested in and what makes them excited and passionate. The student teachers then get to take this and use it to create a lesson plan that works for the student as well as the teacher and the curriculums that they're planning for. The student then can give feedback and say whether or not the task was too easy or whether it worked well, and the teacher can create new lessons and they can build a relationship. This helps us empower our new young teachers from everywhere around the world. So how does this help us here today in Wyoming? And what can it do for us and our schools? By incorporating more students and more teachers into our lesson plans and what we're doing, we can help generate different ideas. As well as by giving the students access to learning with their passions and what they're interested in, we can help encourage their creativity. One-on-one development with kids helps them to get the help they need and to work at the pace that they need, so we can help facilitate their understanding. This helps us create more dynamic learning rather than just focusing on the static. So classroom to classroom. Student to student. With learning as our goal and technology as our tool, let's work to give the classroom back to who it belongs to and give our students more power. So that was the video, if it kind of worked. And the idea is more just the idea of giving the students a lot more power and control in the classroom. And basically what we did was hopefully take the teachers or the main teachers of the classroom and take a step back and just give the power to the students, the student teachers as well as our students, to help them teach each other back and forth. And we were there to be more of the encouragers and more of the people that if they had a problem or if they were working on something, we were the ones that helped facilitate what they were doing. But we weren't the ones necessarily always standing up in front of the classroom and teaching and giving lectures. So that's it. Yep, so that's it. Confusing and disorganized, but if you guys have questions, I can explain a lot more. Yeah?
How do you communicate with students?
Which the students in, so I spoke both Swedish and English. With the 8th graders, we pretty much just spoke in English the whole time. With the 4th and 5th graders, it was a lot more Swedish. But I was there for a year, and I have Swedish family relatives, but I learned Swedish while I was there, so it's strictly conversational. But it's one of the main reasons I got involved, was to help me learn the language. And they taught me. But yeah.
Were you studying there or just teaching?
Yeah, I was studying. So I took classes that would help me really get involved in the people and the culture. And so the main class that I took was a couple different education classes where I got to go to different schools for about a week or a little more, and I got to learn about their education system, which is one of the reasons I went to Sweden too, is because they just have a different education system than we do. And in one of the schools that I was at, I had a friend family, sort of like my host family, and that was the English teacher that I worked with. And so he just said, oh, well, why don't you just stay the whole year? And so I ended up just staying there the whole year. But I went to other schools throughout the year as well. And I studied other stuff, math and anthropology a lot.
How do you compare the two schools?
So it was also interesting because I hadn't done a lot of student teaching in the States. I volunteered in some schools, but I haven't taken education courses as much. I haven't taken any at the university. I've just done it on my own as a volunteer. So the access I have to our secondary education, other than my own experience, isn't as recent. But I found that they had a lot more, well, the classes, they tried to make them kind of more well-rounded, and so the students worked on a lot of different subjects in each class, and so they took a lot of different art classes and stuff that was involved, but then they used those resources in their other classes, and so we got to use a lot of different technology resources in the education, in the English learning class that we were in, but also when they were in math, they did different stuff with woodworking to look at. So they just mixed a lot more of the different topics, but also there wasn't a lot too much that was different either in the curriculum and the tests that they had to do. They had a different grading system where they weren't graded until like 4th or 5th grade or older, and so it was just some minor differences. It was really interesting too to work with other student teachers. We had some from Japan and some from Germany, and to hear their different backgrounds from their school systems as well. Swedish just seems to be really relaxed, but they get a lot of stuff done, so it works well. This was, it's a town bigger than Laramie, but a small town, more so. And so it was the technology school, what would be like a charter school here, but they don't have, so they didn't have to follow exactly everything, but they don't have any private schools in Sweden. They're all public, and so they don't really have charter, but this was like specifically a technology more based school, so they used it in a lot of their different academics. So it was a little bit different than some of the other schools I went to. There was a lot more tablets and computers being used in this school, whereas a couple schools that I went to didn't have computers for their students, or like had a library but didn't have personal computers, because all these kids had personal tablets or personal computers, which was surprising to me, but that was sort of their focus. So it was interesting to see how that worked too, with handwriting and with different stuff being at the different schools. But they used technology. They tried to use it a lot more as a complement to what they were already doing, and trying not to let it take over too much. But like this project that we did in the 8th grade class, it wasn't the whole time we had the class that we did the project. It was a complement to what we were doing, so that we weren't always, so that it broke up, the monotony. So we weren't always up in the front, explaining, but we did a lot of different vocabulary works, and we worked with the other students to talk about what we were learning, and so that they could kind of focus on getting things to match our curriculum as well.
Emma, can you talk about that tool, the video editing tool that you used for producing this presentation? Because I've never been exposed to it, and so it kind of looked cool and interesting. Why did you choose it, and is it something that they use in Sweden? That's where you were using it, so just saying.
Yep. So it's called VideoScribe. There's a couple different, it's a whiteboard video tool, and so it's supposed to look like a whiteboard. They have it's a software, so they have a lot of pre-uploaded images and pre-uploaded tasks, but you can also add pictures in. And I used it because I think I'd seen it in a couple different places. They hadn't really used it in Sweden that I knew of, but I figured it was a technology thing, and I wanted to play with it because I'd seen it in a commercial, I think is the first place, and then in other educational videos, sort of just to facilitate learning, to kind of work with as you're talking and as you're talking about a topic, to draw a picture and to show what you're doing. And I would hopefully get to work with it a lot more so that it could be a little less laggy and it would make more sense. But I really like that idea of having videos, you learn from YouTube or you learn from these different things, but also to have text and to write and to explain it. And so it's called VideoScribe. It's just, if you are interested, you would just look up a whiteboard editing video or different things like that. And so this is one that is a software that I liked. And they have student discount stuff, so I'm playing with it with other stuff as well. I thought it was cool. Does that?
Okay, our time is up, but I suspect that Emma might be available for questions afterwards if you would like to come up and talk to her personally. So thank you for coming.